Andre Holloway was 43 years old, and on a quiet Tuesday morning in October, his wife called him to tell him their marriage was over. She didn't ask. She announced it. The way people announce things when they believe the power in a room belongs entirely to them. Felicia had just inherited $50 million from her parents' estate, and she wanted him packed and gone by Friday. Her exact words, "I hope you understand. I'm just at a different level now." She said it warmly, almost generously. The way you speak to someone you have already decided is beneath you. What Felicia didn't know, what she had never once thought to ask about in 8 years of marriage, was the fireproof combination-locked closet in Andre's home office, the trust documents inside it, the private valuation figure on page 3. $1.4 billion. Andre listened to every word she said. Then he said 2 words and ended the call. And in that moment, sitting on his back porch with his coffee going cold, he made a decision she never saw coming. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The morning air carried a hint of autumn as Andre Holloway settled into his favorite chair on the back porch. Steam rose from his coffee mug, disappearing into the pre-dawn darkness. His leather journal lay open on his lap, its pages worn smooth from years of daily entries. He wrote, Tuesday, 5:45 a.m. Clear sky, 48 degrees. The ritual of these morning observations anchored him. Simple facts, recorded in precise handwriting. Below them, he added, 3 weeks since F met with Carter and Associates. Still no mention. Andre took a slow sip of coffee, letting the warmth spread through his chest. The neighbor's security light cast long shadows across his carefully maintained yard. He'd spent Sunday afternoon replacing worn sprinkler heads himself, though he could have easily paid someone else to do it. Felicia had watched from the kitchen window, her expression a mixture of confusion and faint disapproval. "Why do you insist on doing everything the hard way?" she'd asked later, her voice carrying that familiar note of condescension. "We can afford a landscaper." We. The word felt hollow now. In 8 years of marriage, she'd never once asked about the combination-locked closet in his home office. Never questioned why his father's lawyer insisted on quarterly trust reviews. Never wondered why a man with a comfortable little consulting career, her words, needed specialized estate planning. He opened to an earlier entry from 3 weeks ago. F meeting observed. Carter and Associates, 2:15 p.m. Downtown office. Family law specialists. She took the side entrance. The next day's entry. Called Priya. Protective filing scheduled for Monday. Sometimes patience means waiting until you don't have to wait anymore. His 7-year-old Jeep sat in the driveway, morning dew collecting on its windshield. Felicia hated that car. "Don't you think it's time for something more appropriate?" she'd suggest, each time they attended another charity gala or social function. "You're not a college student anymore." Andre ran his finger along the journal's leather spine. His grandfather had given him his first one at 12 years old. "Write it down before you say it out loud," Big James Sr. had told him. "That way, you know what you really think." The porch thermometer read 47 degrees now. He recorded the change, then added, "Grandfather started with one machine in 1951. Built something real in a country that wasn't interested in his success. Protected it. Grew it. Passed it down quiet." The trust documents in his office told the rest. Holloway Industrial Group, 14 states, defense contracts, metal fabrication, industrial supply, private valuation, $1.4 billion. All of it carefully structured, deliberately kept out of headlines. Wealth without flash. Power without performance. A cardinal landed on the porch railing, its red feathers bright against the fading darkness. Andre watched it, pen hovering over paper. The morning felt heavy with something approaching. He wrote, "Sometimes silence is shelter. Sometimes it's reconnaissance." His phone buzzed. Felicia's name lit up the screen. He answered, letting the quiet stretch for a moment before saying, "Good morning?" Her voice came through bright and lifted, almost theatrical in its lightness. "Andre, honey, I have wonderful news." A pause for effect. "The estate cleared probate yesterday. Everything's final." He said nothing, letting her fill the space. $50 million, Andre. Can you believe it? After all this time waiting? Another pause, which is why we need to talk about arrangements. The Cardinal took flight, startled by something unseen. "I'll need you to pack your things and be out by Friday," she continued, her tone gentle, as though explaining something simple to someone simple. "I hope you understand. I'm just at a different level now." Andre watched the Cardinal disappear into the lightening sky. He thought about the filing Priya had submitted yesterday, about the trust documents in his office, about 8 years of small cuts and careful calculations. "Drive safe," he said quietly, and ended the call. The morning air felt clearer somehow. He opened his journal to a fresh page and wrote a single line. "She has no idea." Then he picked up his phone again and dialed Priya's number. She answered on the first ring, as though she'd been waiting. "It happened," he said. Priya's office was already bright with morning sun when Andre arrived. The downtown view through her windows captured Birmingham's skyline, a vista his grandfather couldn't have imagined in 1951 when he signed his first contract, with nothing but determination and a single metal press. Priya sat behind her desk, elegant and precise in her movements as she reviewed the open Holloway Trust files. She looked up as Andre entered, her expression professional but warm with long-established trust. Andre settled into the chair across from her desk, placing his leather journal on the polished wood surface. She made her move. "Now we make ours." Priya nodded, turning to a specific page in the trust documentation. "The timing worked in our favor. Monday's filing means everything is already properly positioned." Andre ran his finger along the edge of his journal, thinking about his grandfather's first workshop, a rented space barely big enough for that initial machine and the dream it represented. "Tell me exactly where we stand." "The trust assets are formally documented as premarital inherited property," Priya explained, her voice carrying the quiet authority of absolute certainty. "Holloway Industrial Group's current valuation at $1.4 billion, the 14-state operational footprint, all defense contracts and manufacturing facilities. Everything is legally separate and protected." Andre thought about the day his father had walked him through the original Birmingham facility, now the centerpiece of a sprawling manufacturing campus. He'd been 12, the same age his grandfather was when he first learned to operate industrial equipment. "When your grandfather started in 51, Priya continued, he documented everything meticulously. Every contract, every expansion, every transition of ownership. Your father maintained that discipline. The trust structure is ironclad." Andre nodded, remembering his inheritance at 35. The weight of it, the responsibility. "And Felicia's attorney?" "We'll find no path to those assets," Priya said firmly. "The filing we submitted Monday ensures everything is properly classified." The timing of her call yesterday actually works to our advantage. It demonstrates she acted without knowledge of the trust's true value, confirming these were always maintained as separate assets. Andre thought about 8 years of carefully measured conversation. Felicia's dismissive comments about his modest career choices, the way she'd never asked deeper questions about his family's business, as though afraid the answers might disappoint her expectations. "I wanted someone who chose me," he said quietly, more to himself than to Priya. "Not the trust, not the name, just me." Priya's expression softened slightly. "I understand. But there's something else we need to discuss." She opened another folder on her desk. "The preliminary review I started 3 weeks ago. When you noticed her meeting with Carter and Associates, it surfaced some irregularities that require deeper investigation." She slid a financial summary across the desk. Andre studied the document, noting highlighted transfers from their joint household accounts spanning the past 24 months. The amounts were carefully spaced, precisely calculated, and completely unfamiliar to him. These expenditures, Priya said, pointing to specific entries, don't align with any documented household expenses. They're structured to look routine, but the pattern suggests otherwise. Andre continued reviewing the numbers, his expression unchanged. Priya watched him for a moment, then said simply, "Brett Calloway." Andre looked up. The name registered immediately. The charity gala 16 months ago, Felicia's perfectly casual introduction. A client of a client. The careful way she'd mentioned his commercial real estate expertise. The seemingly accidental meetings at social functions after that. He closed the folder deliberately and placed it back on Priya's desk. His voice was quiet, but carried absolute certainty. "Keep pulling. I want everything." The morning sun had climbed higher now, warming the office. Outside, Birmingham continued its business day, unaware of the careful machinery of consequence beginning to turn in this quiet room. Andre thought about his grandfather again, the patience it took to build something lasting, the discipline required to protect it. The living room was quiet except for the soft turning of pages as Andre sat reading in his usual chair. The warm glow of the table lamp created a pool of light around him, while the rest of the house remained dark. He heard Felicia's car pull into the driveway, followed by the decisive click of her heels on the walkway. The front door opened with purpose. There was a pause as Felicia registered the light, then another as she processed Andre's presence. He turned a page, unhurried. "Why are you still here?" Her voice carried the same elevated tone from Tuesday's phone call. "I told you to be gone by today." Andre looked up from his book, his expression calm. "Good evening, Felicia." "Don't good evening me." She set her purse down hard on the entry table. "I was very clear about what I needed you to do. I have moved on. I have inherited $50 million. This situation is no longer appropriate. The house is a joint marital asset," Andre said simply, marking his place in the book with a leather bookmark. "I've retained counsel. Your attorney should contact Priya Ose directly regarding any formal arrangements." "Priya Ose?" Felicia's laugh held a sharp edge. "And who is Priya Ose?" "My attorney." Andre's voice remained steady. "Your counsel can reach her at Carter & Associates." Felicia's expression flickered, a micro-reaction to the firm name. She recovered quickly. "Fine. Another overpriced divorce lawyer. That doesn't change the fact that I want you out of this house. As I said, it's a joint marital asset. Any changes to occupancy need to be handled through proper legal channels." Andre picked up his book again, the gesture carrying quiet finality. "You really don't understand what's happening here, do you?" Felicia's voice rose slightly. "I have moved beyond this marriage, beyond this modest life you seem content with. I have actual wealth now." Andre turned another page. "Your attorney can contact Priya." Felicia stared at him for a long moment, her carefully maintained composure showing small cracks. When he didn't look up again, she turned sharply and headed upstairs, her footsteps heavy with frustrated purpose. Andre waited until he heard the bedroom door close. He marked his place in the book again, set it aside, and picked up his key. The drive to his father's house was quiet, Birmingham's evening traffic thinning as he left the city center. Big James's home sat on a corner lot in a well-kept neighborhood. Not flashy, but solid, like the man himself. Before Andre could knock, the door opened. Big James filled the frame, his large frame backlit by the warm interior light. He took one look at his son's face and said, "She finally did it." Not a question. Andre nodded once. "Come eat," Big James said simply, stepping aside to let his son enter. The kitchen smelled of cornbread and slow-cooked greens. They filled their plates in comfortable silence, settling at the worn kitchen table where Andre had done his homework as a boy. Halfway through the meal, Big James set down his fork. "There's something you need to know." He waited until Andre looked up. 18 months ago, right after her parents passed, Felicia came to see me. Andre's hand stilled over his plate. "She asked about the family business," Big James continued, very careful about her wording. "Wanted to know if you stood to inherit directly, or if everything was tied up in the company permanently." Andre set his fork down slowly. "I told her I wasn't sure." Big James's voice was steady. "Watched her face when I said it. Saw something shift behind her eyes. The kind of shift that tells you everything you need to know about a person's intentions. Why didn't you tell me then?" Andre's question held no accusation, just quiet curiosity. "Because I had no proof. Just an old man's instinct." Big James picked up his fork again. "And because you needed to see it for yourself. Some truths have to be earned." Andre absorbed this in silence, thinking about Felicia calculating her options while wearing his ring, waiting for her own inheritance when she couldn't confirm his. They finished their meal quietly. Andre helped clear the dishes, the routine familiar and grounding. When he headed for the door, Big James put a large hand on his shoulder. No words needed. At the first red light on his drive home, Andre pulled out his journal and wrote one line. "She was planning her next life while I was still furnishing this one." He pulled over to make a call. Priya answered immediately. "Add Big James as a witness," Andre said without preamble. "Document his statement formally." "I'll send someone first thing tomorrow morning," Priya replied. Andre ended the call and sat for a moment, watching the city lights reflect off his wedding ring. The quiet in the car felt like clarity. The morning light filtered through the windows of Priya's corner office as Andre stepped inside. She sat at the conference table, a thick folder open before her, pages arranged in precise order. Her expression was controlled, but Andre caught the slight tightness around her eyes. "Good morning," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "The forensic audit is complete." Andre sat down, placing his leather journal on the table. "Tell me everything." Priya aligned the first page in front of her. "Over the past 24 months, we identified a pattern of expenditures from your joint household account that cannot be reconciled with any shared expenses." She slid a summary sheet across the table. "Hotel charges at the Grand Bohemian, gift purchases from Tiffany's, first-class airline tickets to Miami and New York. On weekends, you were documented to be in Birmingham." Andre studied the statement dates, his expression unchanging. Each line item was highlighted in yellow, with corresponding dates and amounts. "The pattern is consistent," Priya continued. "Usually 3 to 4 transactions per month, ranging from $500 to $3,000 each. Total expenditure over the 2-year period, approximately $87,000 of joint marital funds." She pulled out another document, a calendar overlay matching the transactions against specific dates. "When we cross-referenced these charges against your shared social calendar, we found something significant." She paused, making sure she had Andre's full attention. "These dates align perfectly with Brett Calloway's travel schedule, which is publicly available through his real estate firm's website." Andre's hand rested flat on the table, his wedding ring catching the morning light. "The first transaction we can trace to their relationship occurred 7 months before the charity gala, where she introduced you." Priya's voice was precise, clinical. "That means when she brought him into your social circle, when she orchestrated that introduction, the relationship was already well established. She laid out more documents, credit card statements, hotel folios, gift receipts. She used your joint funds to finance the relationship while simultaneously integrating him into your shared life. The level of premeditation is," Priya chose her next word carefully, "significant." Andre absorbed this in silence, his eyes moving methodically over each piece of evidence. The room was quiet, except for the soft sound of papers being turned. Finally, he looked up. How well documented is it? Every transaction is verified. Every date is confirmed. The pattern is undeniable. Priya tapped the folder. We have original statements, electronic records, and in several cases, actual receipts from the vendors. And it will hold? Yes. Priya's response was immediate. This qualifies as marital waste, the legal term for misuse of joint assets to conduct an extramarital relationship. It's admissible, and it's conclusive. Andre nodded once, processing. He studied the calendar overlay again, his finger tracing the date of the charity gala where she'd introduced them. He remembered Felicia's smile that evening, the casual way she'd said, "Andre, this is Brett Calloway. He's a client of a client." The handshake, the polite small talk about commercial real estate trends, all while she'd known. For 7 months, she'd known. "I'll need copies," he said quietly. Priya handed him a sealed envelope, complete set, properly certified. Andre stood, tucking the envelope into his jacket pocket. His movements were unhurried, deliberate. "Thank you, Priya." He left the office and got into his Jeep, but didn't start it immediately. He sat for a moment, then pulled out into Birmingham's late morning traffic. He drove without destination or purpose, past the university, through the medical district, along the edges of downtown. 40 minutes of movement without a rival. Finally, he pulled into the empty parking lot of the Blue Room, a jazz club that wouldn't open for hours. He parked facing the street and let himself feel it all. Not just the betrayal, but the deliberate nature of it. 7 months of deception before that handshake. 7 months of planning before she brought another man into their shared space and smiled while doing it. The weight of it settled in his chest, not as anger, but as certainty. He started the Jeep and drove home. In his journal he wrote, "I know everything I need to know. Now I wait for the right moment." The private dining room at Bottega glowed with soft lighting as Felicia raised her 3rd glass of champagne. She sat at the head of the table, wearing a new Stella McCartney dress, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. Dominique Shaw and 2 other women from their social circle, Rachel Morton and Sarah Kenwood, leaned in as Felicia spoke, their own glasses half empty. "I just feel—" Felicia paused, savoring the moment. "Free. Like I can finally breathe. Like I'm finally becoming who I was always meant to be." Rachel nodded eagerly. 50 million changes everything. "It does." Felicia smiled, running her finger along the rim of her glass. "And honestly, it's not just the money. It's the permission the money gives you to be honest about what you want." Sarah reached over and squeezed Felicia's hand. "How's Andre taking it?" Felicia's laugh was light, dismissive. "Oh, you know Andre. He's sweet, but small." She took another sip of champagne. "He's the kind of man who peaks at comfortable, who finds his little spot and stays there." The women laughed on cue. Dominique joined in, but her eyes remained fixed on Felicia's face, studying something the others missed. "Remember that Jeep he drove?" Felicia continued. 7 years old, and he was proud of it. Called it reliable. She shook her head. "I tried to get him to upgrade, told him we could afford something nicer, but he'd just smile and say he liked what he had." "Men like that," Rachel started, "are stable," Felicia cut in. "They're predictable, and sometimes that's what you need. For a while." The champagne had loosened something in her voice, a truth she'd been holding back. "Can I be completely honest?" The women leaned closer. Dominique's hand tightened slightly around her water glass. "I always knew Andre wasn't my final destination," Felicia said, her words flowing faster now. "He was— God, this sounds awful, but he was like a stable layover, someone to build with while I waited for my real life to start." She laughed again, but this time there was an edge to it. "I spent 8 years being so patient, playing the supportive wife, praising his little consulting projects, pretending his family's modest manufacturing business was something to be proud of. Rachel and Sarah exchanged glances, not disapproving, just slightly uncertain about the shift in tone. But now, Felicia raised her glass. Now it's my turn. Now I get to live the life I deserved all along. The other women raised their glasses automatically. Dominique lifted hers a fraction late, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. For the rest of the meal, she spoke only when directly addressed, watching Felicia hold court with growing certainty about something she had kept quiet for too long. When dinner ended, Rachel and Sarah hugged Felicia goodbye, their praise effusive. Dominique hung back, making an excuse about an early morning meeting. In the parking lot, she sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. 11 years in estate and trust law. 6 months of knowing something about Felicia's parents' estate that she had buried under the weight of a 20-year friendship. The memory of document numbers, asset transfers, and Councilman Walter Banks's signature surfaced in her mind with the clarity of professional training. She had stayed quiet, out of loyalty, because that's what friends did. Because calling out fraudulent asset repositioning meant ending a friendship that stretched back to college. But tonight, watching Felicia dismiss 8 years of marriage like it was a strategic inconvenience, hearing her call a good man small while drinking champagne she'd bought with money that wasn't entirely clean, something inside Dominique shifted permanently. She pulled out her phone, found Andre's number, still saved from 3 years ago, before Felicia had systematically separated them with careful lies and manufactured conflicts. Her finger hovered over the screen for 5 seconds before pressing call. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Dominique? I was at dinner with Felicia tonight," she said, her voice steady. "You need to know what she said. And you need to know what I know about the estate." A pause. Then Andre's voice, calm and clear. "Talk to me." Andre pulled his Jeep into an empty church parking lot, the engine ticking as it cooled in the evening air. Dominique's name on his phone screen brought back memories of dinners and game nights from 3 years ago, before Felicia had carefully engineered their separation, with scheduling conflicts and misunderstandings that now felt calculated rather than coincidental. He put the phone to his ear. "Dominique? I was at dinner with Felicia tonight," she said, her voice steady but tight. "You need to know what she said, and you need to know what I know about the estate. Talk to me." Andre settled back in his seat, preparing to listen. "We were at Bottega, private dining room, champagne, the whole show." Dominique's words came measured and precise. Rachel Morton and Sarah Kenwood were there. Felicia was celebrating, but it wasn't just celebration. It was something else. Andre said nothing, letting her continue. "She talked about you, Andre, called you sweet but small, said you were the kind of man who peaks at comfortable." Dominique's voice caught slightly, but that wasn't the worst part. "She told everyone at the table, that you were never her final destination. Those were her exact words. She called you a stable layover. Said she spent 8 years being strategically patient, playing the supportive wife, while she waited for her real life to start." Andre's hand tightened fractionally on the steering wheel, but his voice remained calm. "Go on." "She was drinking champagne, laughing about your Jeep, dismissing your consulting work as little projects, making jokes about your family's modest manufacturing business." Dominique paused. "I've known Felicia 20 years. I've never heard her be that nakedly contemptuous. It wasn't just the words, it was the pleasure she took in saying them." "And the estate?" Andre asked quietly. Dominique's inhale was audible through the phone. "This is the part I've been holding for 6 months. My firm, we handled portions of the estate administration. During final documentation review, I found something I should have reported then, but I convinced myself it wasn't my place." She continued. "Councilman Banks, Felicia's uncle, held power of attorney during her parents' final years. During estate finalization, he He repositioned approximately $3 million in liquid assets before the final accounting. The moves were carefully structured to reduce the taxable estate and remove those funds from the formal distribution report. Andre sat perfectly still, absorbing every word. Felicia knew, Dominique said. She signed documents acknowledging the asset schedule. The $50 million she inherited? That's what was left after the repositioning. The whole thing is sitting on fraud, Andre. Not obvious fraud, it was done carefully, but fraud nonetheless. You have documentation? Andre asked. Yes, all of it. I kept copies when I first found it. Professional habit. I told myself it was just protection, but I think part of me knew this moment would come. Dominique's voice strengthened. I'm ready to make a formal statement. Whatever you need, whenever you need it. Tonight made it clear. This isn't about loyalty anymore. This is about right and wrong. Why now? Andre asked softly. Because watching her sit there tonight, drinking champagne and calling you small while sitting on money that isn't entirely clean. Dominique's voice hardened. I've spent 6 months trying to rationalize staying quiet. Tonight broke something. I'm done protecting someone who takes pleasure in diminishing good people. Andre nodded slowly, though she couldn't see it. Thank you, Dominique, for telling me, for being willing to stand behind it formally. It's what I should have done 6 months ago, she said simply. After ending the call, Andre sat in the dark car, letting the full weight of everything settle. The dinner revelations were painful, but not surprising. They simply confirmed what the financial audit had already suggested about Felicia's long-term calculation. But the estate fraud, that was different. That was leverage. He picked up his phone again and called Priya. Pull the full estate filing, he said when she answered. Every document, and add Dominique Shaw as a cooperating witness. She's ready to give a formal statement. I'll have someone reach out to her tonight, Priya replied without hesitation. 1 week later, Andre stepped into Priya's office, the morning sun casting long shadows across her conference table. Spread before her was a carefully organized array of documents, legal filings, financial records, and witness statements, each in its own labeled folder. Take a seat, Priya said, gesturing to the chair across from her. We should go through everything systematically. Andre sat down, placing his leather journal on the edge of the table. Priya picked up the first folder, marked Holloway Trust. The trust protection filing is ironclad, she began, opening the folder to show him the key documents. We moved quickly enough that all assets are formally documented as premarital inherited property. The timing of our filing, before her call, makes it completely clean. She has no path to touch any of it. Andre nodded, his expression calm and attentive. Priya moved to the next folder. Marital assets are straightforward. The house equity will be split fairly. Joint accounts will be divided proportionally based on contribution. Nothing complicated there. She pulled out the forensic audit results next. The financial documentation of marital waste is comprehensive. Every transfer, every hotel booking, every gift purchase, it's all time-stamped and cross-referenced. The pattern with Brett Calloway is established beyond any reasonable doubt. Andre's jaw tightened slightly at the name, but he remained silent. Your father's witness statement about Felicia's inheritance inquiry is properly sworn and notarized, Priya continued, tapping another folder. It establishes clear premeditation. She was actively investigating your financial position while still in the marriage. She paused, then opened the thickest folder. And then there's this. Dominique's formal statement about the estate fraud, backed by complete documentation. Every paper Walter Banks signed, every asset transfer he executed, every document Felicia acknowledged. The $3 million repositioning is all there. What happens with that? Andre asked quietly. I've already passed it through appropriate channels, Priya explained. It's no longer our filing to make, but it will surface automatically in Discovery when we formally request the estate documents. Banks won't be able to keep it quiet. His whole carefully built public image will start unraveling the moment those papers hit the court record. Andre absorbed this, his fingers absently tracing the edge of his journal. And Brett? His deposition is scheduled for next week. Based on preliminary contact, he'll cooperate fully. Men like that usually do when they realize they have no leverage. Priya's tone was matter-of-fact. She gathered all the folders together, squaring their edges with practiced precision. The whole picture is clear now, Andre. Everything is documented. Everything is protected. Everything is in order. Andre studied her face for a long moment. Is there anything else she could use against me? Priya met his gaze directly. No. We've covered every angle. The trust is secure. The marital settlement is fair. The evidence of her actions is irrefutable. You're completely protected. Andre nodded slowly. Then we let it move. Are you sure you're ready? Priya asked. I've been ready since the morning she called, Andre replied. I just needed to know we had everything in place first. He stood, picking up his journal. Thank you, Priya, for all of this. It's my job, she said simply. But you're welcome. Andre drove straight to his father's house from Priya's office. Big James was already on the porch, as though he'd been expecting him. Andre settled into the chair beside him. It's all set, Andre said quietly. Everything's documented. Everything's protected. Big James nodded, looking out across his front yard. Your grandfather used to say, the man who builds slow builds forever. Andre took out his journal and wrote the line down carefully. Beneath it he added, she'll find out. Not from me. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes up and down the street. The morning sun had grown stronger, burning away the last wisps of dawn fog. Andre felt the weight of everything that was coming, not as a burden, but as a certainty. Big James reached over and squeezed his son's shoulder once, then let his hand fall away. The gesture contained everything that needed to be said between them. The grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel sparkled with its usual October splendor. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in ivory silk, while waiters in black tie weaved through the crowd with champagne flutes balanced on silver trays. The annual charity gala was in full swing. Society's elite gathered to support children's education while cementing their own social positions. Felicia stood near the center of the room in a deep blue evening gown that had cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. Her hair was swept up elegantly, diamond drops glinting at her ears, new ones purchased with inheritance money. She held her champagne glass with the precise tilt of someone who had practiced such gestures until they became natural. Dominique watched her from a few feet away, noting how Felicia seemed to glow with an almost electric confidence. Two other friends from their social circle, Rebecca and Sarah, completed their small group. They had been listening to Felicia describe her plans for a winter home in Aspen, the kind of casual declaration that would have been impossible just months ago. The realtor is showing me 3 properties next week, Felicia was saying, her voice carrying just the right note of casual excitement. I'm thinking something with at least 6 bedrooms, room for guests, you know? Rebecca and Sarah nodded appreciatively. These were women Felicia had spent years trying to impress, women whose approval she had carefully cultivated through countless lunch dates and charity committee meetings. Now, with her inheritance, she finally felt truly equal to them. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Catherine Maxwell, a corporate attorney known for handling major acquisitions. She joined their circle with a warm smile, accepting a fresh glass of champagne from a passing waiter. "Felicia, darling," Catherine said, "I was just thinking about you earlier this week. The strangest coincidence, really." Felicia turned toward her with practiced interest. "Oh? Yes, I was reviewing a company profile for a client's supply chain audit." Catherine took a small sip of champagne. Isn't Holloway Industrial Group your husband's family's company? Felicia's smile remained perfectly in place. Yes, that's right. I came across their private valuation in the documentation, Catherine continued, her tone casual but curious. I assumed you'd be familiar with it. Seemed like the kind of thing a wife would know. The air around their small circle seemed to still. Felicia's grip on her champagne glass tightened imperceptibly. The number was quite remarkable, actually, Catherine said, speaking the way people do when large figures are simply facts rather than revelations. $1.4 billion. The silence that followed was absolute. For a fraction of a second, so brief it could have been missed with a blink, Felicia's carefully constructed expression cracked. Her face did something involuntary, a minute collapse that rippled across her features before she could catch it. But in that frozen moment, everyone saw it. Dominique saw it. Her own glass paused halfway to her lips. Rebecca and Sarah saw it, their eyes widening slightly. Catherine noticed the shift in atmosphere and added gently, I assumed you knew. Felicia's recovery was swift, but the damage was done. If you'll excuse me for a moment, she said, her voice almost steady. I need to freshen up. She moved through the crowd with measured steps, her spine straight, her chin high. But anyone watching closely enough could see her hands trembling slightly. In the opulent bathroom, Felicia gripped the marble counter, staring at herself in the gilt-framed mirror. The woman looking back at her wore a perfect dress and flawless makeup, but her eyes held the dawning horror of someone watching their entire narrative collapse. She did the math in her head, the numbers spinning like a cruel roulette wheel. $50 million. $1.4 billion. Her inheritance, the weapon she had wielded so confidently, the number that had made her feel powerful enough to discard 8 years of marriage with a phone call, was roughly 3.5% of what Andre had been quietly holding the entire time. The realization hit her with physical force. She was the layover. She had always been the layover. She just never knew whose. Her reflection stared back at her, beautiful and hollow, as the full weight of her miscalculations settled over her like a shroud. Every dismissive comment about Andre's modest lifestyle, every condescending remark about his little consulting career, every moment she had felt superior to his choices, all of it transformed in her mind, rearranging itself into a new and terrible pattern. She had been so proud of her strategic patience, so certain of her careful planning, but while she had been plotting her exit with what she thought was masterful precision, she had been living inside a much larger story without even knowing it existed. Felicia's heels clicked against concrete as she moved through the parking structure, not bothering to wait for the valet. Her hands shook as she fumbled with her car keys, missing the lock twice before managing to open the door. Inside her Mercedes, she sat perfectly still, hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. $1.4 billion, she whispered to the empty car, the words hanging in the air like smoke. $1.4 billion. She said it again, louder this time, as if repetition might somehow make it make sense. The number bounced off the leather interior, mocking her. Her $50 million, the inheritance that had made her feel invincible enough to end her marriage with a phone call, suddenly felt like pocket change. 8 years of memories crashed through her mind, each one transforming into something unrecognizable in the harsh light of this new reality. The Jeep she had teased Andre about, suggesting he should treat himself to something more appropriate for a man his age. The house she had always found slightly embarrassing when hosting her friends, with its practical furniture and modest square footage. The consulting work she had labeled his little career at countless dinner parties, speaking about it with the kind of patronizing affection reserved for harmless hobbies. All of it was a choice, she said aloud, her voice cracking. He chose every bit of it. Her hand trembled as she pulled out her phone, scrolling to her attorney's number. Janet answered on the third ring. I need to know if we can pause the proceedings, Felicia said, without preamble, her words rushing out. Or reverse them completely. Is there a way to withdraw? A careful pause on the other end. Felicia, Andre filed first. Any pause or withdrawal would require his cooperation. And given the current trajectory. But if we reconciled, Felicia cut in, her voice tight. What would I be entitled to then? Under Alabama law, if we stayed married, Felicia, Janet's voice was gentle but firm. That's not a legal question. The line went quiet. Felicia ended the call without saying goodbye. Her fingers moved automatically to her uncle's number. Walter would know what to do. He always knew what to do. But the call went straight to voicemail. Her stomach clenched. Walter always answered her calls. Almost desperately now, she dialed Dominique. Her oldest friend picked up immediately. I think you should go home, Dominique said quietly, before Felicia could speak. Something in Dominique's voice made Felicia's breath catch. A careful, measured quality she had never heard before. The realization crept in slowly, like ice water down her spine. Dominique wasn't surprised by what had happened tonight. The knowledge had been there in her eyes at dinner last week, in her silence when Felicia had called Andre a layover. You knew, Felicia whispered. You knew something, and you didn't tell me. Go home, Felicia, Dominique repeated softly, and ended the call. The drive home passed in a blur. Felicia moved through her house, the house she had always found so inadequate, like a ghost, not bothering to turn on any lights. She sat on the edge of her bed, still in her evening gown, and poured a glass of wine she couldn't bring herself to drink. The room felt different now. Every surface seemed to hold some small detail she had dismissed or criticized over the years. The practical bedside lamps she had called boring. The sensible dresser she had wanted to replace with something more dramatic. All of it chosen by a man who could have bought the entire furniture store without blinking. Her phone felt heavy in her hand. She had sworn she wouldn't do this, had promised herself she would maintain control of the narrative until the end. But control had become a foreign concept in the last 2 hours. Everything she thought she knew had shifted beneath her feet, like sand. She stared at Andre's number on her screen. 8 years of marriage. One phone call that ended it. And now, another phone call that might define everything that came after. Her finger hovered over his name. She pressed call. The basketball game played softly on Big James's television, casting a blue glow across the living room. Andre sat in his usual chair, the leather worn smooth from years of evening conversations in this same spot. His phone lit up on the side table, illuminating Felicia's name. Big James glanced at the screen but said nothing. His large frame settled back in his recliner. Andre looked at the phone for 2 full rings, watching it vibrate against the wood. Then, with the same deliberate calm he brought to everything, he picked it up and answered. Andre? Felicia's voice was unfamiliar, stripped of its usual polish, its careful performance. Something raw and desperate had replaced it. I've been thinking. About everything. He said nothing, letting the silence stretch between them. On the television, players moved soundlessly across the court. I was overwhelmed when the inheritance came through, she continued, words tumbling out faster now. My parents' death, the estate, all of it. I wasn't thinking clearly. What I said on the phone that day, it didn't come out right. I was emotional, impulsive. Andre listened, his free hand resting motionless on the arm of his chair. Big James watched him from the corner of his eye, saying nothing. We had 8 years together. Felicia's voice softened, reaching for something intimate. That means something. I miss you. I miss us. There's something here worth saving, isn't there? We could start over. Do it right this time. She paused, waiting for a response. When none came, she pressed on, her tone shifting subtly toward strategy. We could talk about what this looks like going forward. Make arrangements that work for both of us. Find a way through this together." The words hung in the air. Not quite an apology, not quite a reconciliation, a negotiation. Andre waited until he was certain she had finished. When he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, entirely free of anger. "Felicia," he said quietly, "I heard everything you just said, and I need you to hear me now." He paused, letting the weight settle. "Priya filed 9 days ago. The trust documentation has been submitted. The process is moving, and it is not stopping." "Andre, please." 18 months ago," he continued steadily, "you went to my father and asked about my inheritance potential. You audited me while wearing my ring. I know about Brett Calloway. Every hotel room, every gift, every dollar you moved from our accounts to finance something you started 7 months before you introduced us at that gala." The sharp intake of breath on the other end told him everything. "I know about the estate fraud," he said. "I know your Uncle Walter repositioned $3 million before the final accounting. I know you signed those documents knowing what they contained. I know when you started planning your exit. I know all of it, I've known for a while." The silence on the line was absolute. "I want you to be okay," he said softly. "I genuinely do. But I am done. You told me to pack my things and get out. You said you were at a different level. I want you to know. I heard you. I just didn't tell you what level I was on." He could hear her breathing, unsteady and shallow. "Drive safe, Felicia." He ended the call and set the phone face down on the side table. The game continued playing quietly, players moving through their familiar patterns. "Was that her?" Big James asked, without looking away from the screen. "Yeah." Big James nodded once and reached for the remote, turning the volume up slightly. Neither man spoke again. They didn't need to. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.